Hey, everybody. Hello. How are you? I'm fine. Thank you for asking. I appreciate you asking how I'm doing today. That means a lot to me. I'm glad you're here hanging out with us today. Guess who's here? Oh, yeah. Guess who's here? You know who's here. The one, the only, number 5, by the way, the 5th time leading the charge, just absolutely kicking indoors, the number 5 appearance on the broadcast with us today. Leading, I don't know, you're just dwarfing everybody. You're going to get groupies out of this, Jenny. That's what I think. You're going to get groupies. Everybody, I am so excited to have her here once again. I love talking to her. I love what she does. I love the USDA. I love all the people that are around her and why they show up every day. It's fabulous. Please, everybody, give it up for the Deputy Administrator of the Agricultural Marketing Service, National Organic Program, the one, the only Dr. Jennifer Tucker. Jenny, welcome.
Hi, Todd. It is great to see you. It is wonderful to see you. How are you?
You know what? Thank you for asking. Everybody else just asked when I introduced the show. I'm doing fabulous. I'm excited that you're here. I love having you on the show because I love getting my head wrapped around talking to you. I love thinking about what's going on in the industry and what I can throw at you and what we can talk about and help people get involved, because as I've done a gazillion, the 4 times prior having you on, I'm going to do it the 5th time. You all don't get enough thank yous from the industry. You all don't get enough thank yous from people. Your staff and what you all do is absolutely amazing. You show up every day. You fight a fight that nobody knows you're even doing. You tackle problems that people don't even know exist. And it's just a beautiful thing. So to have you here and to celebrate your work and celebrate your team and celebrate what's going on organic, hell, I can't get any better than this. I mean, come on. It'd only be better if you and I were sitting over at Old Ebbett's Grill having a beer and eating some oysters and having this meeting. That would make it a little bit better. But if not, we'll just do it via Zoom.
We'll try it sometime, and my team and I thank you so much. It's always great to be with you and kind of reflect on where we are on this journey together.
Yeah, there's no doubt. It is. We are on a journey. We're on a journey to figure out how we're going to feed 9.5 billion people in a few years, plus the aliens. They're coming. You and I both know they're coming. Oh, there's no two way. They're already here. I mean, there's some people out there in the media today, I'm convinced, and some of these players out there that are, I think Elon's one. I really do. I think Elon's one. I believe he is. I believe he's come down on one something or another. He's here. He's one of them. I think there's a few of them out there, but nonetheless, I'm excited to have you here, and let's get rocking. Would you please just tell everybody a little bit about your journey and who you are and kind of what your role is at the NOP, so people are kind of get up to speed?
Sure. So I'm Jenny Tucker, a Deputy Administrator of the National Organic Program. I have been now with the National Organic Program I just passed my 11th year anniversary with the
Congratulations.
program. So, well, thank you.
What did you get? Did you get something? Did you get like a stapler? Did you think you bring you something and nothing? Didn't even acknowledge it.
I got a hug from a teammate, and that was really all I needed. So we're good.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? And I'm sending you a Zoom hug right now and a high five, congratulating you. That's awesome.
It has been so interesting watching this community, this sector, this industry grow, learn, expand. It's really an amazing journey. So I've been the Deputy Administrator for the National Organic Program for a bit over 4 years. Before that, I was the second in command. So one of those wonky government titles, Associate Deputy Administrator. But it has allowed me to see sort of all the different parts of the organic sector and to watch it really reach a lovely level of growth and maturity. And so my job is to help protect the organic seal. And so there are people across the organic sector that are protecting the seal, but our job is to oversee the USDA organic regulations. So we develop standards and then we enforce those standards. So when you go to that grocery store and you pick that organic product, we establish what those standards are that allow that product to be called organic. And then we make sure that it is what it says it is.
Yeah, I love it. And it's a big lift, and especially from the perspective you have, the tenure and what you've seen. You've done this the whole time. This has been a roller coaster ride that literally it's just continued to keep going up, right? It's just like click, 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 you go, and it's like, it's been a ride. I'm quite sure of that.
When I started, we were at exactly 30 people, and now we just passed 80. And it's really for a program to continue to grow in response to industry growth, sector growth, because that's who we're here to serve. It has been a remarkable journey.
Yeah, I love that. We're here to serve. And that's going to lead me to my first question. I think probably one of the most important questions I'm going to throw at you all day today. How important is it to the NOP and the USDA to have participation from the industry, constituents, the American population, people of this country to step up and support, comment, criticize, whatever they want to do, but get involved with this process. How important is it?
Ma'am, we serve you. And so we need to know what you need and how we can best support you. And that's in a true democracy. That's what government is here for, is to hear the people and serve the people. And that is my real highest value, is to be contributing to our country's democracy as a way of governing ourselves. And I take that really seriously. And that requires that the people who are part of that system participate in the system. And you can do it in so many ways, through our advisory board and participating in that process, through rules and regulations, participating in that process, just writing us a simple letter, letting us know what's on your mind. All of those forms are participation. There are many, many doors to democracy, and we want folks to use them all.
I love that. There's many doors to democracy. I think we forget that sometimes. I think we forget, I think people probably assume, oh, if I write a letter, nobody's going to read it. And that's really untrue. I mean,
read them.
Yeah, I mean, it's a part of the thing. It's how it could be one line of one letter that goes, oh, right. And if we don't, to your point, if your side isn't participating with the American population, it goes against what the whole marching orders are, which is to get people and your constituents to be a part of the process, right? So you have that obligation to read those. I think people need to remember that your voice does matter. And in this industry, maybe more than almost, and I don't know, maybe that's a big stretch, but maybe more than almost any of them, if you think about it, right? Because we are setting the path of food.
Well, and organic, because it is such a public-private partnership of, yes, the government sets and oversees the standards, but the program is largely administered in the private sector by certifiers, by organic businesses, by organic consumers. We are all part of that. And so I think that does up the importance of participation. And the organic sector is a passionate group. They really want their voice to be heard, and we're here to hear it. So even when people are angry or disagree, I want to have the conversation of, here's why the decisions were made the way they were made. Here's why we're doing it the way we're doing. Let me walk you through the process, because when people understand the process, they're better able to participate in it. And that's a lot of my job, is to both share and protect that process, no matter what the outcome. And I often get, well, what do you think about this policy? And well, actually, what I think is I want to protect the process, so that policy was made with engagement from everybody who could be impacted, and the outcome will be the outcome based upon that process.
I love it. And I think it's so important that people hear that. And thank you for that. I think we've just got to keep beating the drum of get involved, right? In all aspects. And NOP is one, but there's other things that people can get involved in. If you voted for somebody, if you take the time to do it, let them know what you think. That's how we're going to get this ball down the field, right? It's super important. So I love the fact that engagement is something that you lean into, that you want, that you're seeking, that you're asking. And that's why I know, for me, it's such an important first volley to come out there. I want to get into some of the things that are kind of going on. I mean, obviously, we talked a little bit about what the NOP is. We got an NOSB meeting coming up, so I'll get to in a second. I thought, but before we did that, there's been some pretty cool things that have been happening at USDA that I do want to throw out on the table, I think, that are worth some time and energy. And one that I think is really cool that I'm seeing a lot of press about, a lot of people talking, really positively about, is this organic transition initiative. So can you tell us a little bit about what it is and what's it about?
Yeah. And so one of the things, Todd, that you and I do are we play acronym Scrabble. And so we've got some important acronyms to introduce, and it's within a context of a very exciting initiative. So we'll throw some acronyms in there, but it's really about the initiative.
and by the way, there is a quiz at the end. So
there's always a quiz at the end.
There's an acronym quiz at the end.
Because it wouldn't be the government without the acronyms. But so let's talk a bit about this initiative. USDA has announced $300 million. So that is a huge investment in organic for a new organic transition initiative. So that's the first acronym, OTI, the Organic Transition Initiative. And the purpose of this $300 million OTI initiative is to provide comprehensive comprehensive support for farmers who are choosing to transition into organic production. It is also designed to help current organic producers that may need technical assistance or some mentoring in a certain area if they want to expand their business. So the point of the initiative, the goal is to deliver what we call wraparound technical assistance. So that's farmer to farmer mentoring, direct support through conservation financial assistance, and additional premium assistance for crop insurance, and then ultimately supporting building organic supply chains in targeted markets. So we call that pinpointed market development. And so the funding will also be used to increase organic expertise throughout the department. So we're talking extension agencies and staff at the NRCS, regional technical support centers, and external partners that we work through in order to help organic farms or farmers that are transitioning to organic or just organic curious find out kind of what's involved in that. And so one of the components that we are helping to administer through the National Organic Program is the second acronym, Transition to Organic Partnership Program, TOP. So transition transition.
I was trying to get it quick to get that out, but I couldn't. It's like, okay, transition to organic. Okay, I got to get to it.
Yeah. So Organic Partnership Program, TOP, which is one component of that 300 million. So TOP is about 100 million of that 300 million, and we will be administering it through the National Organic Program with many, 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 many partners. So we're building a farmer to farmer mentoring network that will help recently transitioned producers who have faced a lot of market shifts or challenges during the transition period. How can we help them? And so we are building partnership networks across 6 regions across the United States with a range and depth of local organizations who will provide direct farmer training, education, outreach, connect people with local mentors, have farm days where people can come together and talk about the challenges, have workshops on things like market development, finding markets for your products, because we're only going to transition organic farmers in if there are markets for those organic farmers to sell into. And so business development is a very important part of understanding what is sort of the financial planning you need to do for organic. How do you get through that 3-year transition? How do you find markets, even markets that will work with you through transitions and long-term contracts? So it's a collaborative initiative. It'll involve many partners that are all working together to achieve the common goals. So we are in the partnership building process right now. Big initiative, big investment. So it'll take some time to get in place, but it's actually moving quite quickly. The organic community, I think, has been really primed for this, ready for this. They're ready for this collaboration and community building and the work that we'll have to do to really join hands and join collective efforts across the country to continue to grow organic. So we're excited about it and looking forward to it.
Oh, absolutely. And, look, the timing couldn't be any better. I mean, we know that there's a decline, trying to get new farmers involved, especially in organics. We know that that's an issue. Barrier to entry is always a challenge, no matter what you're trying to do to launch a business. But when you think about market opportunities, which is really a strong area that to get people enticed to, if we're not adding more organic farmers and yet demand's increasing, that runway for new people to come on is laying there for you to really get into. And I think that, to me, when I look at this initiative and I think about where the industry's heading, the demand, what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, what I read, this is as good a time as you're probably going to get to jump on board, come over, come over, follow the light, get away from the dark side, come on over and join us. Because I think those opportunities are going to remain there. And as you deal with an economy that's doing what it's doing on a global scale, and you think about supply chain problems and these other things, this is a really, really good time for folks to be strongly considering joining, the organic folks out there and getting that, I like to call it that lift up, right? You're getting out of that chair and somebody throws that hand to give you that boost. This is the time to grab that hand and go for it. Because I think the market's receptive to those, to new folks coming on board.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Todd. See, you're a great spokesperson for the program, and we've gotten so much positive feedback about the intent, the design. So we're very excited to really move forward and start getting this assistance out where it's most needed.
Well, thank you. And look, it's I really believe we need to care about what we're going to feed these 9.5 billion people as much as how we're going to feed these 9.5 billion people. And if we can do it organically, I'd be the first one to say there's no reason why we can't, other than ourselves holding ourselves back. It's a very lofty goal, but I love lofty goals, right? It keeps you motivated. It keeps you moving forward. So I think this is a great time for this initiative. And I think it's a great time for people to take a hard look at it and step up, because we need you, right? We need you. So yeah, I love it.
Well
I think
put.
it's great. Thank you. Another thing that's up there that is kind of interesting to me, and when I read this, it's like, I wonder what this really means and what this is going to be involved. Let's talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, about the EPA is no longer maintaining its list of inert ingredients for pesticides, which is interesting, I guess. To me, it's like, okay, first question is, why did they stop? And then the second one, so I'm gonna throw you two on this one, anyways. At the same time, why did they stop? And then what does it mean now for the USDA and the NOP with them doing that?
Sure. So EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, has a very, very important role in evaluating materials and ingredients. And the organic program, USDA Organic Regulations, has a list called the National List for folks who are not into this wonky stuff every day. And the National List lists the synthetic materials that are allowed in organic production and the natural materials that are prohibited, and then materials that are allowed for processing. And so what we're talking about here is two listings on our national list. It's actually very specific, EPA lists 3 and 4, which relate to mainly inert ingredients that point to EPA. So they're EPA list 3 and 4. And at the time the regulations were put in place in 2001, list 3 and 4 were actively kind of run by EPA. Now, EPA, like every federal agency, goes through some changes. And so they decided many years ago, actually, they were not going to maintain list 3 and 4 anymore. And they have a lot of other lists. So there's still, there are still a number of lists that are codified in the regulations for different purposes at EPA. But these two particular lists that we referred to are now not being maintained. And so the board, the National Organic Standards Board, which we mentioned a little bit earlier, has worked for a lot of years in coming up with options of how do you replace list 3 and 4 so that people know which inert ingredients are allowed. And so they did some really, really good work. They recommended an option of using a different EPA list. And we went to EPA and said, okay, what do you think of that option? We've got a recommendation from our advisory board to use this other list you have since you're not doing these lists anymore. And I said, yeah, we don't think that list that the board has recommended is a good fit, and had a lot of good reasons for why they didn't think that was a good fit. But we've got these other lists over here, and here's some other options. And so it's a very wonky topic about very technical lists. What it fundamentally needs for us is we need to update our regulations in some way that allows us to make these ingredients, synthetics, available to organic farmers in a way that is also manageable. So one of the reasons we use list 3 and 4, I mean, there are hundreds of substances on these lists. So how do you replace those reference lists without making the national list 5 times as long as it is right now, or whatever it would end up being? Right. And so bottom line is we have published what is called an advance notice of proposed rulemaking. It's a regulatory tool where we lay out a lot of different options. So it's not a proposed rule like the community is used to saying. It's a pre-proposed rule where we say, okay, here's what the problem is, and here are a bunch of different kinds of solutions. What do you think? Give us input. And so the community will give public comment on that. And then ideally we will move to a proposed rule with, okay, this was all this participation we got, back to the participation point, and here's what we think the best option is given the trade-off. So it's hard anytime we're relying on other agencies' regulations. If those regulations change, we've got to figure out what to do. And so this is a classic case of that happening.
So in thinking about the industry now and thinking about what, we lean right into about the word participation right off the bat, I'm going to ask to go back to the whole thing. What are your expectations or hopes, for the community, organic community, to participate in this process? Because it is, to your point, it's a big deal. And it is not, it's a complicated issue. It is not, not everybody's going to be into it, right? There's a lot of lifting to go with this. So what are you hoping for the community gives back to you in this process?
There are some real experts on this out in the organic community. And so what I'm hoping is that the different organizations with interest in this topic, some of them are membership organizations, some of them are scientific organizations, that they'll really think through what the options and implications and trade-offs are on these lists and give their input on where those trade-offs might be. There are lots of different ways of sort of philosophies of approaching this, and they will require trade-offs. It's really easy to point to another list and say, wow, that's the list, go deal with it. When those lists go away and you have to either replace them or build your own list, there's a lot of considerations that have to go into that. And so we're looking for solutions right now. We're looking for solutions from smart people who are willing to be very thoughtful about the trade-offs involved in different solutions. And the organic community is good at that. So I have full confidence in the ability to get some very, very thoughtful input in.
I love it. I love the word thoughtful, right? That when you start from perspective of being thoughtful, God, you can accomplish a lot, can't you?
All that really smart critical thinking. We've got a lot of good, smart critical thinkers out there in the community. And so I invite them to this process.
I love it. Another thing that's out that I know has been a big project and is out now in the ethos of the world is the organic livestock and poultry standards. And you guys are now asking for comments from the public about organic animal welfare reforms. So two-part question again, and I got to throw the participation word at the bottom of it, but talk about what this means, what you're looking for, and how do folks participate to help this along? Again, kids, let's participate in the process.
Yeah, and sometimes the process is a long one and it has a lot of twists and turns. And so this is a OLPS, another acronym, Organic Livestock and Poultry Standards, is the continuation of a very long conversation about animal welfare in organic. Right. There was a final rule that it had been finalized, but because of timing issues, it was ultimately withdrawn. And so this is kind of this is not a regulatory term, a take two on this rulemaking initiative. So proposed rule has been published. It includes a lot of different provisions related to animal welfare and standards for livestock and poultry. The public comment period is, as we are recording, still open. And so for folks who are interested in this topic, we've already gotten in 17,000, I think was the count earlier this week. Letters and comments in on this topic. So it is clearly of great interest to the organic community. Folks participate through the public comment process during rulemaking. And so regulations.gov is the master website for any rulemaking. And it's amazing. Just sometimes I go, when I'm looking for our rules to make sure everything is okay, you happen to see what other agencies are listing for rules. And it's really amazing the breadth of work happening across the government. So it's not just about organic, it's about anything in government where agencies want to make a change to a policy that impacts people. Get involved, participate in that process.
Yeah, 100% agree. And it's not hard to get involved.
It really isn't. The regulations.gov actually makes it quite easy to register. And that's frankly one of the reasons we have 17,000 comments is it's actually easy for people to have their voices heard through that tool.
Yeah. I mean, look, if I can navigate your website, anybody can navigate your website. That's a fact. That's a fact. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the NOSB. And because coming up, we've got a meeting coming up October 18th through the 27th, a couple of days of public comment, then a couple of days of meetings out here on the West Coast in beautiful Sacramento, October in Sacramento. Fantastic time to be on the West Coast. So before we get into a little bit and kind of drill down to it, could you give everybody just a little bit of a quick little recap of what actually is the National Organic Standards Board, just for those that may not know?
Yeah, National Organic Standards Board is the advisory board that helps bolster participation. So always back to that theme of participation. In fact, Congress thought participation was so important, they built it into our act. The Organic Foods Production Act established the National Organic Standards Board as 15 volunteers from the organic community who advise USDA and the secretary in the development of the standards. And so they meet twice a year. They represent all all perspectives from the organic community. It includes handlers and processors and scientists and consumer representatives and environmental protection, natural resource conservation specialists. It's amazing, the range of people on the board. And so they listen to public comment, and then they make recommendations to USDA that then feeds into the policy process. So they meet twice a year, but work throughout the year on evaluating different topics.
Big job, big voluntary job, big lift. It is not, I'll be very candid. It's like another job. It is a big responsibility to sit on. It is, but it's a big responsibility that I know they don't take lightly. There's a lot of work involved. It can be a hot button place to work. It could be there's a lot of things that go around. There's so much passion in this industry. It's tough to mitigate. It's tough to navigate through that some of these times. I commend all these folks that are putting this time and energy and doing this lift and how important. And again, nobody's out there thanking them. They're bitching at them, but they ain't thanking them, right? But I mean, in a lot of ways, and I think it's just so important to remember that this is what these folks are doing. Like they're giving up their time to serve our country and to serve the organic community. And and I think it's important that we remember that no matter what they decide, no matter what we talk about, let's be kind. Let's find solutions. Let's talk things through, because I think that's how we're going to win the day. And it's so important.
It's so important. Our board members, they really do. They're so invested. When they join, we let them know kind of what the time commitment is, and some of their eyes get really big, and yet they're still all in. And they really do represent different perspectives throughout the community, and we should, even when we disagree with their decisions, are surprised by their decisions, don't understand their decisions, we need to respect and hear them.
Yeah,
and thank them for that work.
Yeah, and participate, right? I mean, so there's public comment periods that come with this meeting, right? So there's 2 days of public comments. And of course, this is an in-person meeting, and this is, I'm gonna butcher this, Jenny, but you're gonna have to hold my hand. This is the first in-person meeting in how long?
Yeah, we were talking about that earlier today. I think it's 3 years. I think the last time we were together was Pittsburgh, which was fall 2019, because it was spring 2020 when we ended up
the wheels fell off the
our
bus.
World changed. So yeah, it's 3 years. I think that it will be a time of rejuvenation, of healing, of recovery, of just remembering where everybody sits. So I hope we'll all just be very mindful of the significance of the moment and approach it with a lot of just thoughtful, back to the thoughtfulness, thoughtfulness and respect for the process, and grateful for the fact we can be together.
100%. It's so funny because you start to go back to some of these events, these trade shows are coming back on. In some ways, it's like the asylum doors open and I get to see the sunshine for the first time. It's weird. It's people just don't know what to do anymore around. It's great though. But the level, I think the camaraderie that's come out of this time away from each other, and the love that you're feeling back to people, the conversations, driving forward, it's very powerful. And I think this meeting is going to be along those lines when everybody gets together and takes a breath and like, oh, wow, we're really doing this. So in-person meeting is going to be the 25th through the 27th up in the Big Sac here in California, which will be really something special for people to come join if they can, or participate, because they are going to be on Zoom too. So you can Zoom watch these, correct?
Yeah, this will be a big change for us. It used to be that if you wanted to experience the national meeting, you had to be at the meeting, or you had to wait for the transcripts to come out. We are going to really try to broadcast in real time through Zoom, so people who can't be there can watch at home. And so that's probably going to be the most difficult part of it, is how do you hold a meeting with 150 people all in the room, 18 board members and NOP staff, and broadcast to however many people decide to listen. So I think we're all learning how to do this. And so I'm crossing my fingers that everything will broadcast appropriately.
Put the camera in the back of the room and hope the audio works. That's your best bet right there, without a doubt. I want to talk about a couple of things that are on the agenda, because I think that they're important to bring up. And there's certainly some topics that are front and center right now and getting some press and stuff. And one of which that I really think that I want to make sure that we keep talking about, because I think it's so incredibly important, is this issue about organic fraud. And it's a real thing. And so can you give us some insight on why this is important for folks to understand, and just what it's about?
Yeah, fraud is something I spend an awful lot of my days and nights worrying about, because my job, if I have more organic farmers come to the table, my first job has to protect them from fraud. And that's a lot of what we do at the program, is making sure that the farmers can trust the labels, so that when they're making that investment, they know we've got their back. And that really summarizes our role here, is to make sure we have your back. And that's what the fraud conversation continues to be about. Whenever there is money, there is going to be an incentive for fraud. And so we work on this at both domestic and import levels. That there's been a lot of focus on import fraud over the last several years, but there have also been some prominent cases involving Department of Justice, so an important part of ours in the enforcement work, of domestic fraud. And I think the Strengthening Organic Enforcement final rule has many provisions to really focus on fraud prevention. That's under review by the Office of Management and Budget right now. And that is, the work will continue. So final rule will be implemented, and that fraud work will continue, but new things will happen and new needs will emerge. And the board has done a nice job of talking about kind of what's next, what is needed by the industry to make sure we have traceability, make sure that certifiers have the tools they need, inspectors have the tools they need to detect fraud in the moment on the ground when they're doing their annual or unannounced inspection. So very, very important topic, central to our mission here at the National Organic Program.
100%. I mean, this industry is about integrity, and when integrity is lost, it's almost impossible to get back. And it's such an important issue. It's unfortunate. It's so dominant in your day, but it's the reality though of what this business is.
And it's not just organic, right? There is food fraud is a thing. A fraud in every industry where there is money to be made is a thing. And so I don't want anyone out there to think that this is somehow unique to organic. Food fraud is real, and we hear about it in the news, and is something we all have to be very clear-eyed in confronting.
Absolutely. I mean, olive oil leads the way with food fraud. Honey, surprisingly, honey is like number 5 on the list of fraudulent items, that things are out there. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that people need to go like, wow, really? It's like, yeah, you need to think about it. There's more money being laundered into honey than almost a lot. I call it honey laundering. Fascinating topic to get into, but it's really important that we stay in front of this and that we keep these conversations rolling, because you are protecting the consumer's interest. And I think that's something that we, as organic producers, people that talk about the industry, support the industry, need to recognize, that we all have an obligation to protect each other's integrity. And if somebody's not living up to that, they don't need to be in the game any longer. I mean, they need to be called to the mat. I think it's terribly important.
And it does take all of us. So we can do things at the national level, but you know who you're buying from, right? And you choose who you buy from. And I think that's very, very important, particularly in complex supply chains, very long supply chains. Consider the relationships that you are building so that you have that trust, because trust happens between people. And so we encourage the entire industry to really take this on collectively. This is a group problem.
Yeah, it 100% is. It's absolutely a group problem. And again, it goes back to participation, folks. I'm going to keep beating that to death in this conversation, because it's so important.
Yeah, that is an active part of participation. We haven't really talked about that here because we've been focused on standards. But we do have an online complaint form, and if you have evidence that there is fraud happening in the market, you have some, you've got a smoking gun. We want to know about it, and so you can file an anonymous complaint with the National Organic Program. And participating in that shared oversight is an important part of the process as well. And after the standards are developed, there's no point in having clear standards if we're not enforcing them, and we need your help to do that.
100%. 100%. Want to talk? I mean, just recently, the appellate court here in California gave a ruling on the hydroponic lawsuit that was out there, and I just want to touch on it a little bit. And if you wouldn't mind, if you want to just throw a little something on top of that, or just comment on it, and see what your thoughts are. It's an interesting process that we've gone through. And the lawsuit itself is incredibly interesting. But I don't think people, they read as hydroponic, but when you read the court documents, it's much greater than that, which I'm glad that we came to the resolution that we did for now and see where this thing takes us. But if you wouldn't mind touching on it a little bit.
So sort of briefly, because I think it also comes to sort of this discussion of process in the government. Part of democracy is remembering, the basic civics lessons that a government includes Congress that does the act, the Organic Foods Production Act. It includes the executive branch, which is where our program lives in administering those regulations, but it also includes the judicial branch. And so when we make a decision out of the executive branch that people disagree with, the judicial branch gets involved and tests was what we did legal. And so this was really a case about actually, it was a form of participation. We got a request, it was a petition to prohibit hydroponics. And so the request said that we should do rulemaking to prohibit hydroponics. And I denied that petition for rulemaking. I said, no, we're not doing rulemaking to prohibit hydroponics. And here's why. So we explained our rationale for that. And then there's a lawsuit contesting that denial. So that's where it came back to, was us saying we were not going to do rulemaking. And it does work its way through the legal system where the courts upheld that at this stage in the process, it made it to the appeals court that the USDA took a legal act in denying that petition. And the lawsuit goes into, I'm not going to try and summarize that at all. And that process, there continue to be other steps that can happen here. But that's a thumbnail of
what happened.
What's in the public. All of that is part of the public record of what happened.
But again, it's about that participation word, no matter what the case may be, and it was a very interesting process to be a part of. Again, I go back to what I said earlier. When you take a look at the breadth of what it was really about, it was a very broad brushstroke about what was going to be, what they wanted kicked out of and not to be certified organic anymore. It's very interesting to see, and the reaction that the industry has. It's been participating in this and watching and listening has been really kind of an eye-opening experience. So it'd be interesting to see where it goes and what's next, but I did want to touch on it a little bit because I think it is certainly at the forefront of a lot of people's minds over the last couple of weeks. One of the other things and that's on the agenda coming up is climate smart ag for the NOSP, which is, what are we at? The USDA announced, is it $3 billion+ now?
The Climate Commodities Program was was recently announced. Yep.
Yeah, it's like $3 billion. I mean, so it's climate smart, climate ag, whatever how we want to throw it, climate smart ag. It's really a big topic these days. So if you wouldn't mind, kind of tell everybody a little bit what climate smart ag means, if you wouldn't mind, and maybe even kind of where that definition came from, and if you wouldn't mind elaborating a little bit on it.
Yeah, so climate smart agriculture is a broad term. It really does relate to agricultural practices that are supportive and responding and mitigating the effects of climate change. Those are Jenny's words, not the USDA definition. So anyone out there listening, that was sort of Jenny's version of the definition of that. I didn't look it up, USDA definition of but that's my kind of understanding of it. And I think that when you talk about organic, there's all sorts about organic that is climate smart. The carbon sequestration, all the crop practices, biodiversity support, natural resource conservation, all of those elements about maintaining and improving both soil and water quality. All of those are climate smart practices, but I think that sometimes consumers and even other buyers don't really know what organic means. It's so many things that it's kind of hard to put your finger on it. And we want to make sure that organic is understood to be climate smart also. So organic farmers who are putting all sorts of documentation together for organic system plans, for example, that they actually also get the credit for climate practices where it's appropriate for them. So some folks use organic system plans to also help with their documentation for state level, credits, for a climate credit. So I think it's important for organic to be part of that climate smart conversation, and the board has a work agenda on that topic right now.
Yeah, and I want to kind of get into that because I read through the discussion document about organic and climate smart, and I found some things in there that was like, kind of surprising to me. One of which I was really surprised that there's really not a deep conversation about how water is a part of climate smart agriculture and the discussion about water. There was really no dimension or discussion focused on the part that water plays for folks in this environment. Do you think that was an oversight? Do you think that, because when I look at that, it's like the whole document is really soil driven, which I get, but do you think that's an oversight, not getting into the conversation specifically, water reduction, how we're going to, because here in California, I mean, water is a big deal. And how do we overcome that?
This is where we're going to go right back to that theme of participation. So part of the reason the board does things that are called discussion documents is to have that discussion. And so they put together an initial discussion document paper that the public can then weigh in on. So anyone who's signed up to give public comments, if they want to weigh in on that topic, that's something that they could bring to the table is, hey, we think water is missing from this conversation, and this is what we think should be added. Then the board will go back and work on it more and build in the public comment that they get and do a revised version that perhaps includes things, when you have 15 people, and it's actually less than that because a lot of this work happens in the subcommittees.
Right.
You may or get a handful of people who did their absolute best to write something. And okay, we missed that. And so that's why we have participation, is so everybody gets to play in the document. So I think, again, why participation is important. So explaining the role of water in climate smart agriculture is a role for the public in making those comments.
I know for a fact that everybody every day wakes up to try to do good, right? I really firmly believe that. And I believe that they do the same thing as well. And they do good. Their mind is what they know. And I think we've got to keep them educated and open up their eyes to other things and what's out there, whether it's this issue, whether it's a fertilizer, whether it's, aliens coming down, all of it is a part of being that global community in this industry to uplift each other and to win the day. Because I go back to what I said earlier. I care what we feed these 9.5 billion people as much as how we're going to feed these 9.5 billion people. And so I think it's just really incredibly important that we invest in that process. And that's the reason I appreciate you kind of giving us some perspective from your side on this.
All perspectives need to be heard on all of these issues, so that, some inside baseball there in terms of just the realities of how any large group coming together trying to achieve great things is going to ultimately work. Yeah.
100%. Well, I got something fun for you. And I emailed you and I told her, I said, hey, every time you come on, I get, feedback and people say, hey, why didn't you ask her this? And it's like, well, because you weren't in my brain when I was working on this and, blah, blah, blah. So I thought, okay, let's do this. So we're starting a new thing here. And here we go. It's going to be round one of this. This is Jenny's mailbag. You're not only your guest number 5, you literally have your own postal box here at the house now. So, I got stuff coming in here. So I pulled a couple of these questions. And this is legit. This isn't me making stuff up. These are little legit emails that folks have sent me. And I thought this would be kind of a cool way to go. So if anybody has any questions for Jenny, because if I got her for 5, I'm pretty sure she's going to come back for 6 at this point. I mean, I think when you get this many under your belt, it's like a habit now. She's going to have to come back and get another recharge of hanging out with me for an hour. So let's read, so here we go. I'm going to fire this one off. And a couple of really good questions. I really like this question because I to be honest with you, I didn't think of this. Maybe I did, but never gave it a much thought. I never thought of this until this question popped in and I read it. I thought this is really an interesting one. And I'm looking forward to running this by you. So I'm going to read this off. This is from George. The organic community worked very hard on what information must appear on the organic label to assure consumers they're buying a legit product. The USDA needs to make rules around online sales. Online sellers need to make sure and be responsible for all the information that's on the product label. They need to make it available to consumers online. Everything from the ingredient panel to the certified buy statement is required by regulations to appear on labels. However, there's no such requirement for these to appear on a digital display of organic products. And as an example of the disconnect digitally, when you go on to the big AF, Amazon Fresh, they have a box that you can check that says organic, or another box that you can check that says USDA organic, but there's only one organic. So why should, the question leads is, why should digital consumers have less access to label information? That's a big question. That wore me out. my heart's beating like a rabbit after beating. I need a break.
And so these are, it's a great question. And so truth and representation in all labeling environments is important. And so there is something in the organic regulations called the retail exemption. And so like, for example, a retail store that is only selling organic products in certain circumstances doesn't actually need to be certified. And so it is interesting that as the rules were written, there are also some exemptions for uncertified handlers. So people who are handling organic food in certain conditions don't need to be certified. When the regulations were written, remember it was the early 2000s. And so in the early 2000s, I don't know about you, but I was still, calling up my internet provider on a modem. So at the time the final rules were written, I mean, people were really thinking about brick storefronts. That was the mental model. And it was really hard to figure out, what part of a store needed to be certified. So if you're grinding the peanut butter, do you need to be certified? That kind of thing. Right. And so that's where people's head were. No one knew what Amazon or anybody else, any of these online retailers are going to end up being. And so I do think the strengthening organic enforcement rule that is currently under review right now, it does acknowledge this shift and in the market and has some provisions that relate to this as drafted. I think the other element is the enforcement side of it, that we do actually have an active relationship with major online retailers. And when we get a complaint that somebody may be selling organic that is not certified, we absolutely do pursue that. And so we do have a very good relationship with many retailers where truth in advertising is important to them for their brand as well. And so our team has a proven process for pursuing those types of complaints. So if it is on a website and you can't find the label information about who is it certified by, that's the kind of thing we do want a complaint about, because there should be at least a picture that allows you to zoom in and see who certified it, just like you would in a store. So
grocery store.
Yeah. So both standard solutions and enforcement solutions on that one. It is online environment just wasn't something that was conceived at the time of the final rule. So it was written through the eyes of a brick and mortar, not an online environment. So,
well, 100%. Well, look, I mean, the world is changing so rapidly in agriculture. So, you're right. I mean, heck, things that you guys were working on 5 years ago are different today, right?
Different today. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, it's going to have to be an evolution. But again, I think it's a great question. It's certainly, because it caught me by surprise going, God, I didn't even, yeah, you're right. That is okay. And then I did a little digging too. It's like, well, I got to go check this out. I was like, oh yeah, there really are two boxes there. It makes sense. So, but again, it goes back to being, and you're asking for it point blank. We've talked about the entire broadcast. Participate, go online, say this, let you guys, because you are a staff of 80, but you're not 80 folks riding around on horses with badges, right? It's just, you need the public's help.
And I do want to say there is some regulatory nuance here, that there is USDA certified organic, but because of our trade, we have some trade arrangements, for example, with the EU, where, for example, a product that is certified under the EU standard as organic can be sold in the United States. And so that's not a USDA certified product, but it is an EU certified product, and we've determined them to be equivalent. And when you're looking at some of these retail organizations, they are working across borders. And so same thing we have equivalency with Canada. So it could be that if that was actually certified under the Canadian organic standard, we accept it as equivalent. It's not USDA certified, but it is an equivalent product. There's also the small business provision that if you're selling less than $5,000 in organic business, and some mom and pop shops are doing less than $5,000 of business, you don't have to be certified and you can call yourself organic. organic, you just can't use a seal. So there are enough rules there where, some of these retail organizations, they understand those nuances and act accordingly. The question is, do the vendors understand that, and are they doing it accordingly? And that's where the complaint process comes in. So there's some reasons for the nuance, and some of it may be violations that we want to pursue.
Yeah, and we got a lot of retailers that listen to this broadcast. I think it's, this will be a really good port for them. Like, oh wow, that's probably something we need to throw over to our IT guys and say, hey, how are we doing with this? Because I would bet you, and I don't even know, I didn't do the deep dive, but I bet it would be probably surprise you how many people are not exactly addressing this question, in their own platforms online. And I understand why, I get it, but I mean, it's certainly something we want to embrace and up the game, right? If you're going to work this hard, get credit for it.
And so we want to thank George for the question, right? Because I think, and that's also part of participation, is participate in these types of kind of educational sessions where we all kind of learn together about what's happening out there.
100%. Here's one more for you too. I like, here we go. What should we expect for a time frame for publishing the national list recommendation as proposed rules, in particular, the fertilizer recommendation coming from the spring meeting?
Yeah, so great question. I think broadly for national list rules, those are real high priorities for the program, because materials are something that farmers and processors use every single day. So when we get a recommendation from the board on the national list, we do tend to move very quickly. And we've got a very, very strong team here where if you look at the rules that are coming out, they're right on the heels of NOSB recommendations by rulemaking standards. So that rule is particular interest to the community. We also know that there are a lot of eyes on that NOSB recommendation related to ammonia extracts, and we know that the market really craves certainty. And so it is a high priority. It is a high priority for us, and we are writing it now. I can't give an exact date on publication. And
but it's
we're working on it. Yeah.
That's good enough. Yeah. Look, I mean, that answers the question. There's so much exciting stuff going on, and you're driving a big ship going a lot of different directions at the same time. What's next and exciting coming up for you guys? We got anything, obviously you have a lot of things in front of you, no doubt. You got anything you want to share, anything exciting? Obviously we need everybody to participate in the meeting coming up here in a couple of weeks in October. Figure out how to do it, Zoom in, watch. If you've never watched one, hang out for an hour and check it out on your lunch break. It's really worthwhile. It's really interesting to be a part of the process and to see how the process works.
And it is a cool demonstration of democracy. So I think it is worth it for that, just to be exposed to that process. Big things for us coming, and it's a good sort of executive summary of this session of we are eagerly waiting the publication of the strengthening and enforcement final rule, organic livestock and poultry standards. Once that public comment closes, we'll be interested in moving ahead with the next stage there. The inerts and advanced notice of proposed rulemaking will also provide really important information moving ahead. So I do think the community can see our emphasis on standards development and standards protection, all the work that continues to happen on the enforcement side. And that's the stuff I don't get to talk to you about while it's underway, but it's certainly something that we spend a lot of time thinking about and doing here. And sometimes that work doesn't get public. The successes aren't always public, but they do happen. Certainly coming back face to face for the board meeting, I think will be a major milestone for all of us in the community, and the program included. So we're putting a lot of thought into planning that event. So, and then of course the Organic Transition Initiative and the Transition to Organic Partners program, really getting that stood up and operating with many, many partners across the country is so key. So I'm expecting to be really bored over the next few months. Not, that's
how many meetings do you have a day, lady? Come on. See, I mean, you have so many orders in the water, and you have to try to find each one in every hour. It's like, I got to grab that one. I got to go grab that one. It's a tireless job, and I can't even begin to imagine, walking a mile in your shoes with what's in front of you on your day. Your desk is just
it is
chaos.
fun. It is fun, and conversations like this are a fun part of my day, because think about what we talked about today here, and the range of it's really amazing, and that's why I love organic and being in with all the people who make all of this possible.
I love it. I appreciate you. I appreciate everybody there, the hard work that you guys do. I can't thank you enough. I can't thank, how much, I want you to tell your staff exactly what I said, how important it is that they do what they do in those days when they don't think it is, and they need that uplift. Just know that there's a lot more people out here that love on them for what they do than they probably know. And it's important that they remember that their work is so valued, and it's making such a difference on our planet, such a difference for this community that we call the organic sector. And we need to keep elevating their day and brightening their day and appreciating their day. And I hope more and more people will take the time to do that and participate.
Yeah. Amen. No,
I love it.
Good closing there.
Thank you. I appreciate you. All right. So, here's a $100 question. No, don't BS me now. $100 question. Am I changing the 5? Over here? Am I changing the 5 to a 6? Is there a 6 in my future?
I'm going to send you a green Sharpie so you can just color in the bottom part of the 5 and make it a 6.
Done.
There you go.
I appreciate you, Jenny, very, very much.
I appreciate you, Todd. Thank you so much for having me once again. I enjoyed being with you.
It's an honor. Everybody, Jenny Tucker, I don't know what else to say, right? Send your mail. We're going to do Jenny's mailbag. Going to keep going. Who knows? Maybe we'll start doing it socially. We'll throw stuff out. We'll go back and forth with everybody, and we'll answer questions and keep elevating the game and keep elevating the participation. Join her staff, join the NOSP, be a part of the process, and let's get over the hump and let's win the day. And let's see if we can feed 9.5 billion people organic food, huh? Doesn't sound like a far-fetched idea if we all lean into it. Let's try. Anyways, go inspire somebody today, just like I know Jenny did for me, and I hope this conversation did for you. We appreciate you. Check us out on social media. Come back and listen to us. Jenny's coming back for number 6. I can't wait. And I appreciate all of you for listening. Take care of each other and keep a smile on your face. Take care.